We now know about how to use floats to float our elements to the left or the right. Another important CSS property we can use to position our elements is the position property. This gives us various methods of placing or adjusting where we want an element to appear on the page. There are 5 position values we can use called static, relative, absolute, fixed, and sticky. To demonstrate this, we need an element to work with. Any element in our HTML will be fine. So I'm going to go over to our product detail and then select an element. In fact, let's go over to the index where there's more products. And then let's select an element such as this button at the very bottom. So let's go over here and add an ID to this button. And any name is fine. I'm going to call this position. And then save that. And then if we go over to the CSS as usual, we can go down to the bottom and target this with the hash. And then the name, which was position. The default value for position is static. This simply means the elements will be placed where it would normally be in the flow of the document. This could be in the top left, like we've seen earlier with block level elements, or the next position in the row if it's an inline element. Setting CSS properties such as top, bottom, right, or left have no effect in offsetting this element. So let's give this a go. Let's add 10 pixels to the top. Then over to the index page. And we can see this add to cart button has not moved at all, because it only takes up the position it would normally be in. If we did want this offset to apply, we could change the position to be relative. So let's add position of relative just above this. And now if we save and go back over to the browser and then refresh, now the button has been pushed down from the top by 10 pixels. Relative positioning places the element where it would normally be, just like it was before, but also takes into account any top, bottom, right or left values to offset the element. You can also see that moving this element will not affect the position of any other surrounding elements. Next up we have absolute. So let's change relative to be absolute. And then over to the browser. And we see it jumps out of place. It's now up at the top of the web page. Absolute, unlike the last 2 values we've looked at, will take the element out of the normal flow of the document. This means it will not be placed in the next available space. There is actually no space created for it. This is why it's sitting at the top above other elements. So currently the top value of 10 pixels is taking effect. If we were to go over and add a new value, so let's add the left, also of 10 pixels, refresh, and now this is placed 10 pixels from the top and 10 pixels from the left. This position has defaulted to be referenced from the very outside of the web page, or to be more precise, the HTML container element. We can also change the element it is to be referenced from if we don't want to use the HTML element. All we need to do is set the position of another parent element to be relative. So if we wanted the button to be referenced from this main container, for example, surrounding the products, we could go over to the main tag in the index page. And then we could add a CSS style property. And here we could set the position to be relative. And let's see how this affects it with a refresh. And now this is referenced 10 pixels from the top and left of the main relative container. Or if we wanted it to be referenced from this first product div, we could do exactly the same here. Instead of adding this to the main, we could remove this and then add it to the div with the class of product. Refresh. And now this is referenced from the top left corner of this first product div. So I'm just going to remove this inline style and then save that. So this absolute value gives us a lot of flexibility, but we do need to be careful too, as things can also move as the browser is stretched. This means we need to be really careful when using absolute. Now let's move on to the fixed position. So rather than absolute, changes to be fixed. We can also leave the top and left, that's fine for now. If we save and go over to the browser, we'll see nothing looks any different at first to when this button was referenced from the HTML. We'll see the element is also removed from the flow of the document, just like it was with absolute. Also, we can see these top and left values still take effect. To see exactly what this does, we may need a bit more content on the page. So I'm going to copy our 6 products. So the first div with the class of product, and then scroll right down to the last one, which is just before the main tag here. So copy that, and then paste these in once more. So we now have 12 products, and then refresh. Then if we go ahead and scroll down the page, the button stays in its fixed position in the top corner. You may often come across this for things such as an email sign-up box, which you often see in the bottom corner. Finally, we also have the sticky option. So we can change the position to be sticky over in the style.css. But this time I'm going to target the aside. Give that a save and then over to the browser and refresh. So now at first glance our page looks back to normal. There seems to be nothing different than it originally was. But if we go ahead and scroll down, rather than this sidebar being moved up with the rest of the products, it stays in place on the left of the screen. You will often see this for navigations or menus, so they're always visible to the user. So I'm going to remove this aside section and then give that a save. And we can also remove the rest of these products which were added. So I'm just going to undo that, just leaving the original 6 products. Okay, good. This is how we use the position property to have better control over placing our elements on the screen.